Wednesday webinars, which we really hope you're going to enjoy. Over the course of the summer, every fortnight, we're going to invite some experts and also some members of the World Horse Welfare team to share some insight into a particular area of equine health and welfare. And this evening's webinar, or today's webinar, is on maintaining your horse's fitness over summer 2020. And this evening, I'm delighted that Pippa Funnell, the world-class eventer, who needs no introduction, and Adam Cummins, who's our centre manager at our Lancashire Rescue and Rehoming Centre, are here to share their perspectives, speaking for about 20 minutes each, and then there'll be a chance for Q&A after that. Now, obviously, this is a virtual event. We'd love to be at Pippa's stables this evening on a wonderful summer evening, but we're not. So this is very much the next best thing. And we really want you to be involved. So if you're watching on Facebook, if you can share the live video, that would be brilliant. And also, if you only catch a part of this evening, or you haven't been able to, if you want to share it with your friends, then please let them know that afterwards we'll have the recordings on our YouTube channel too. And today, we want to make this very much a two-way conversation. So if you've got questions, then please do ask them on the Zoom chat function or on Facebook, and we can pick up as many as we can during the course of the evening. I do apologise if we don't get to all the questions, but we'll certainly try and do as many as we can. So on Facebook Live, use the comment section, and if you're Zoom, please use the Q&A tab. If you are on Zoom, that's great, but if you're on Facebook, you won't be able to take part in our interactive polls, and we've got a couple of poll questions just to get a feel from you today. So please do, if you want to get involved in the polls, then sign up on the Zoom, which is through on the World Horse Welfare Facebook page. So really hope you enjoy it. That's very much the aim. Obviously, you can sit back with a glass of elderflower, like Pippa, or something stronger if that is your wish. And because we're running these over the summer, if you've got topics that you really feel we should focus on, and we're going to focus on equine weight and a number of equine disease and a number of other things over the course of the summer, then please do let us know. So let's kick off with a poll question, just to get a feel for where we are in the summer of 2020 and what, of course, are extraordinary times. And we thought we'd ask, sorry, I'm a bit of a numpty when it comes to technology, but you've got the question there. Did your horse or pony, did your horse or pony, or one that you care for, have a reduction in exercise because of the COVID restrictions? And you've got a series of options there, so please do get busy and get responding. And whilst you're doing that, I just thought I would just introduce World Horse Welfare, if I can move this. There we go, sorry. Just a little bit about World Horse Welfare, which was founded back in 1927. And at the heart of what World Horse Welfare is all about is supporting the horse-human partnership in all its guises. And of critical importance, especially to Pippa, is that we support the responsible use of horses in sport, and are welfare advisors to the International Equestrian Federation, the FEI, and also the British Horse Racing Authority. We run the largest rescue and rehoming scheme in Britain, and we have nearly 2,000 horses out in homes around the country. And Adam, as centre manager for one of our 4 centres, plays a critical role in that. And we provide care, promote research, shape laws, and raise welfare through education. And of course, education is very much at the heart of what we want to achieve through these webinars, through supporting us as owners to be better horsemen and horsewomen. So today's topic is maintaining your horse's fitness over the summer of 2020. And when we think of fitness, obviously we think of aerobic fitness, but we also think of how we can keep our horses healthy too. And also in a COVID world, we need to think about how we can maintain our horse's fitness with lockdown restrictions, albeit they're easing at the moment, but also, especially because this summer we've got such hard ground. So I hope Basil is going to be able to show me some results of the poll, just to get a feel. So it's a pretty even split, like a good Brexit discussion. So a number of you, yes, horse went from constant regular work to little or no work. And actually, that's just the biggest one. And actually on the other side, no horse remained in constant regular work. So you've got a good sort of split there, and then everyone else sort of in between. So that's a fascinating result, and will hopefully sort of inform Pippa and Adam in what they talk about, because obviously we've got some people who are in all sort of boats, so to speak. So if I'm not sure if I can close that, and I'm now going to go on to introduce Pippa Funnell, who's our very own patron of World Horse Welfare, the first ever person to win the Rolex Grand Slam, multiple major championships medal winner, has competed in 3 Olympic Games, and most importantly was a World Horse Welfare trustee and now a World Horse Welfare patron. And for all of that, she also received the MBE back in 2005. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Pippa, obviously you have a number of horses to ride, and you do a lot of competing, but you also do a lot of training and coaching too. How has lockdown and the challenges since the middle of March treated you?
Well, I mean, we've got a very large setup at home between William and myself. My yard is slightly separate. Luckily, we don't work together. We live together, but William commutes a mile down the road. We grew out of our home base, so I've got 38 horses based here at home, and then William's a mile away, the other end of the village, and in total we have sort of 115 in work. So it is a lot of horses, with obviously the Billy stud and many youngsters. The decision right from the beginning, I mean, we actually happened to be in Spain on the Sunshine Tour when this all broke out, and we had 19 horses down there jumping, and we got very sort of anxious. Were we going to get home okay? Because there was lots of talk of borders being closed, but fortunately we got all the horses back. And then because we were in Spain and Spain were on lockdown, we actually naturally isolated ourselves. We felt it was only fair. And we are very lucky that within the 2 yards, you know, we got a great team that work with us, and we very much have lived in our own bubble, and life for us at home has gone on very much as normal, apart from no competitions. But we felt it was, I mean, we're dealing with a lot of young horses, and I know there was a lot of talk when we initially went into lockdown that people should people stop riding, and we looked at both sides, and we felt because of we don't have enough land just to suddenly throw 115 horses out, and we very much felt that the safest thing for all of our staff, for ourselves and the horses, was actually to keep them in a consistent routine. We certainly didn't, obviously the galloping with the event horses, the faster work all stopped, and the jumping actually stopped. Because we felt we didn't want to risk any of our staff or ourselves by jumping, and particularly putting pressure on the medical, you know, the front line when they were busy. So we stopped the jumping, but I think William and I just quickly got very much into the mode of really, really working on the basics, and we looked at the whole situation, I think, more than ever. I think we actually appreciated where we live, what we've got, and you heard of all these desperate things and the work that was being done on the front line, and what was going on in the world, and people in lockdown, and we just felt our lockdown, how lucky are we living in the country, working and being with these fabulous animals, and so I think we just felt very much the lucky ones. And we basically looked at it very positively and thought, right, we're going to really work on this sort of attention to detail with the basics. That doesn't just obviously involve the horses, but very much focusing on our team that work for us and the guys that ride for us. So I'm not sure they've enjoyed it much, because I've done a lot of lunging without stirrups, all stuff to actually improve their riding. And I say I've been getting them working without stewards, I've actually been really tough on myself as well to make sure that I sort of maintain that riding fitness, that core strength, because I am the biggest believer through being with Ruth McMullen, an amazing horsewoman who I was with in my early days for 8 years, but I'm the biggest believer, and it's what she taught me, that 95 of your horse's problems are the rider on top. So that's what we've basically been really trying to do, is work to better ourselves as riders, being very self-disciplined. And I think the horses have been amazing. They've gone out regularly. I mean, I try and turn them all out for an hour and a half a day, maybe 2 hours. But as I said, we didn't have the land just to throw the whole lot out. For sure, William worked it that some of the 5-year-olds went out, and then we brought in a whole lot of 4-year-olds. So I think, looking on the positive, it's been a wonderful time to produce those young horses and spend time not just producing them with bettering their basics in riding, but just being able to handle them, being able to show the guys at home how we handle them. And I'm a real, again, passionate about, I mean, I absolutely adore my horses to bits, but it's just, it never ceases to amaze me when you're dealing with young horses, 4-year-olds, how I suppose they're like kids, aren't they? That it's black and white. You know, I'm very much, you know, if I want them to stand still, they stand still. I tell them to stand still, and as soon as they stand still, I reward them. And it's just fascinating to see how quickly horses relax and breathe, and they actually get reassured by that sort of discipline structure. But the reward is key as well. You know, if you want something, you just tell them, and then they get the reward when they stand. And so a lot of time has been spent just demonstrating to our guys. I've taught a lot of them how to long rein horses and drive horses and lunge them correctly. So I think it's been actually a very useful, well, 10 weeks or whatever, however long, it's probably longer than that now, that it's been. My top horses, I obviously was really excited about the spring that was lined up for them. I have it on the back of obviously having a fabulous run at Burghley last year and being back on the team at the European Championships. I was so excited about heading for Kentucky, and I had 2 horses lined up for Badminton. So with them, I think it's a little bit like me. I mean, let's face it, I'm an old athlete now, and it wasn't, you know, from my own point of view, I could not just sort of think, right, I'm going to have 10 weeks holiday. I have to keep training myself, keeping my body in order. And it's the same with the horses, you know, as much as some of the owners felt, you know, it's expensive to keep them. And yes, I would have loved to have said, oh, well, let's just put them out in the field. But for the horses, actually, I don't think it would have been, or for what I'm talking, my top horses that are athletes, to just put them in a field and forget about them isn't necessarily the best thing for their bodies. And because I also know how long it takes to get the horses back up again. And realistically, mine always have a break. And so I think when we talk about maintaining horses' fitness, I think it's important that this isn't, yes, it's an exceptional year, but actually it's the same every year. You know, if your horse has to have a break through, whether it's through injury or through it has a holiday, and mine do have holidays at the end of the season. They have between 8 and 10, 11 weeks. Okay, a lot, some people don't now, but I'm a little bit old fashioned. I think at the end of the year, they deserve a break. And then there's always a very much a clear process that I have used year after year after year, which I have a system. I really believe in my system. And that is, if they have anything from probably 6 weeks or more, if they have 6 weeks or more off without being ridden, they are on a month's road. I'm lucky, again, got great facilities, from the point of view of good roads and good hacking, but mine would have a month's hacking before I start working in the school. So and two of those weeks would be walking work. But it's a little bit, you have to take into account what people's facilities, what their setup is, and it's still, we always have to look at the safety side of things. And if I don't want to say to people, if your horses have been hacking if your horses have been out in the field through a lockdown, I'm not saying you should do a month hacking on the road if they walk out of their gate and they're on the road that's busy, the M25. So it's all, you know, according to people, what they've got at home. But yes, I mean, so I always do that, a month's hacking, then I gradually build them up, start doing a bit of school work, start doing a little gymnastic work and so on. So it's, you know, this is for my top horses and well, pretty much all my event horses. And that's the system I used. And that's why I didn't want to let these guys down for a long period during lockdown, because I didn't want to have to start all over again with the uncertainty of when the competitions are going to start up. So they have been ticking over. I think all of mine have benefited from it. I would say I personally didn't reduce the food a lot because I hadn't increased it, because I hadn't really started galloping. So they're in enough work that I haven't had to reduce the feed. I actually purposely have fed them a little bit more, because our horses that are so sort of, that we're talking at the top of their game, they get very fit, and I think it's a wonderful chance to be able to build up their top line. Don't get me wrong, it's not that they're fat, because they're not fat, but just have a little bit more covering to build up this top line so the muscles build up. And that's what I've really been working on, because the stronger the top line and the muscles in the right place, the stronger the horse is physically. And that's what we want. You know, we want horses to develop and strengthen that, because if you do all that work right, then you have so much less chance of injuring them. So it's all about that maintenance and that side of it. But as I said, you know, the uncertainty, and even now we're uncertain about what we're going to do. And I would say I'm a great one for mixing the horses' work up. If I was a horse and I was put in a school every day, 20 by 60 or 20 by 40 every day, and having a rider doing sitting trot every day, it would drive through my head in. So I'm a real believer in real variety of work, and I'm very lucky because I'm able to get to some fields literally very, very locally with lots of hills. And I think slow walking work and trotting work up and down hills, all that is good for their strength and fitness. I mean, I've seen, I can't remember, I can't remember, really, you might remember, there was a very famous racehorse that basically they got fit from doing so much walking because it had a leg injury. I can't remember, but don't underestimate slow work on different terrain is so beneficial. And also, as much as I love doing the work on the hills in the fields, because it actually really improves my balance too, because you have to use your core strength, and we mustn't get away from, you know, all the time you want to focus on our horses. But as I say, it keeps coming back to ride, you know, it's our job as riders, as owners, to be self-disciplined, to be all the time trying to better ourselves. And you don't have to be thinking about going to Burley or Badminton to ride better. Anyone can make themselves ride better by being self-disciplined in the way they ride, and doing a few things to improve their fitness, which only helps the horses. And I think, you know, moving on that with anyone who's wanting to think about competing, it's really, really important that you address your horse's fitness, but you also address your own fitness, because that only will help the horses. So yeah, I mean, who knows with the competitions? Yes, hopefully there's talk that it might start up in a few weeks' time. I'm sitting here not 100% sure yet exactly what I'm going to do with my team, because my top ones, I sort of very much feel if there's not going to be a big goal to aim them at this year, do I want to just be running them for the sake of running them? But having said that, I still think, well, yes, they slightly need to have their, eye kept in. But also there is, as Rowley said, very much there's the issue of the ground conditions, and I'm always, I'm the worst with ground. I hate running on firm ground. If for any reason I do, I never sort of go fast on it. So there is the ground condition to take into account. Also, there's the horses, my younger horses. I actually I haven't got a large team of event horses, but the younger ones I would like to get out, because I feel I've got three, one young advanced one and a nice 8-year-old, 9-year-old that's a little bit behind, and a 7-year-old that hasn't even gone novice yet. And I want to try and get them caught up, which doesn't mean suddenly I'm going to run them madly, but I would like to try and get them out if I can. So it's, different, just it varies depending on the horse. But for you guys, I think anyone watching, I think what you have to sort of, as I said, we touched on the rider fitness being so important, and then your own horse's fitness. I think it's I think it's important to know well exactly how long the horse has had off and what sort of work you've been doing with it, and the same thing. It's a little bit difficult because I can't exactly be telling you and guiding you, because I know exactly with my horses when they're fit and when they're not fit, and I know the way I can work. And when I teach people, and sometimes I get on their horses and they've been trotting around for half an hour and the horse hasn't worked, they think it's worked, and then I get on it for 5 minutes and it's done as much work in 5 minutes because of the work I'm asking it to do, then it's done in 30 with them. So I think it's not necessary, it's quality, not quantity. For sure, variation. And I think you have to, if you've competed before, you should know anyway, your level of how much work you have to do with the horse for whatever you want to do with it. I mean, obviously it depends on the degree of what event you're doing, whether you're doing an 80, a 90, 100. But for sure, it's going to help any horse to be fitter, because it's safer for you. Firstly, it's safer for the horse, it's safer for you, but it does reduce the injury side. But I think, I've always been one anyway, that to me, all of mine are always on 6 days a week working. When I say working, but they're ridden 6 days a week. So again, it depends on people's time. Are they busy? Have they got time? But I think if realistically, you see many horses. I've seen many horses, and it's something that I think needs addressing within the sport of eventing, because you do see horses, particularly at the lower levels, that aren't fit enough, or the riders aren't fit enough. And I have to hold up my hand when we talk about fitness, because there was one episode I had where I would only say once in my entire career that I rode a horse that tired, and it was a horrible, horrible feeling, and I never want to do it again. And I made sure I've never let myself get to that point where I'm riding a horse that isn't fit enough, or it's got tired. So I think it's important for you guys I'm talking about eventing. I've got jumpers as well. It's the same for you guys if you want to go jumping, and there are alternatives. There will be alternatives. Show jumping will start up. Probably arena eventing will start up, dressage will start up. So you don't necessarily, if you can't prepare in the right way to going eventing, it's not the end of the world if you go down another line and just work on a phase. Say if you're struggling, let's better the phase in dressage. You don't have to necessarily go eventing. So I don't think people should shy away from the fact that if we actually miss it, and I don't, to be honest, if we didn't get a competition this year, it's not going to be the end of the world. It's certainly not going to be the end of the world for our horses, and it's not going to be the end of the world for us. And over my career, because horses at high level sport, they can pick up injuries, and even a minor injury, they need time out. And I have time and time again, when you have horses that have long layoffs, it doesn't need a click of a finger, providing they've gone through all the rehab and the work and the building up of fitness, mentally they don't forget. So I don't think you should be overly concerned if you don't get to compete. But I think also we have horses, we want to compete them, but it is just being very, very open-minded, realistic, and think, I mustn't put what I want to do above what the horse should be doing. And I actually say, I work with a lot of young riders, and it's something I always say is, just because your aim is that, and it's the same for us, not so much with me now, because if there's an excuse not to go to a big one, I actually quite like that excuse, because the big ones scare me, the big events. But I know a lot of, keen young riders, they have a plan in their head, and you might have a plan that your plan is to get that B100, or that I want to go novice, and which I think is great to have those goals, but you must make sure that goal isn't a personal thing to you, that it must be the right thing for your horse. That really is critical to me, because it's a partnership. So I think we have to, to say exactly what everyone should be doing with their horse, it is very difficult, because you all have your own setups at home, but I think just judge your horse. If you're thinking about starting to compete it, judge it, see how quickly it might get tired or whatever, and don't suddenly go out there hammer and tong and start thinking, gosh, I want to go eventing in 3 weeks time. I haven't done much work, but I better start galloping it. Don't go suddenly out and start galloping it. I think it's just, take your time, be sensible about it, and gradually increase the workload, and be all the time assessing your horse to how it's coping with that gradual increase of workload. And the horses tell you, and that's what I try to teach our lot, reading this, being a good rider it's not all about that. It's about trying to be horsemen, that you learn to read and assess your horses and judge your horses, and they'll tell you, if you should be able to tell if, how they're reacting, whether they, you're overdoing the work. They'll be a lot quieter. Okay, some horses, you might have a quiet horse and it might need a kick and get going, but I think you all know your horses, and read them, and just slowly increase the work, and be patient before you get out competing. Trying to think, and have I missed much, really, and how long have I been waffling on for?
Well, you certainly haven't been waffling, but I think that's probably a natural pause there. What's great is a lot of people are asking a lot of questions, and I have a fear that we're not going to get through all of them. But so we'll come back to pick up on a number of things that you've raised there, Pippa. And I think it was fascinating the way you sort of focus very much on rider fitness and horse fitness, and the power of variety, the power of doing the basics. And I think that there's a lot of questions that have reflected on that. So that's been really good. So Pippa, thank you very much for that. Now, but as I introduce Adam, I'm going to attempt to share my screen again, because we've got another poll question for you, which is, is your horse's fitness, horses or ponies fitness, something that's concern to you? And again, if we're thinking both this as athletic fitness or just fitness and condition in general. So whilst you're thinking about that, I just wanted to introduce Adam Cummins, who, as I mentioned, is our centre manager at Penny Farm, our Lancashire Rescue and Rehoming Centre. And Adam's been in the equine industry since 1997 and is a recent joiner at World Horse Welfare, joining us last year. He's been an equine instructor for one of the UK's leading colleges for 17 years. And this has obviously provided him with a wonderfully sort of broad range of knowledge around horse care, riding and teaching. But he doesn't only just tell people, because he can do it as well, because he's been a competitor in affiliated dressage up into and including Prix Saint George level. He's also trained riders for all levels, both affiliated and unaffiliated, from prelim to advanced, both regionally and nationally. Now, Penny Farm is based just outside Blackpool, and it's one of the 4 centres where we rescue and rehome, and we try and rehome over 300 every year, and we did that last year. Of course, we had to sort of temporarily stop our rehoming scheme during the lockdown restrictions, but I'm delighted to say we're beginning to be under very careful conditions to be able to rehome again. So if that's something you're interested in keeping yourself and one of our horses fit, then please do look on the World Horse Welfare website. Now, in Pippa's words, Basil, I'm not sure if I've been wittering on enough to give people time to have a quick view on where people are on that poll. So again, a good split, but the majority are very concerned to you, or that they are very concerned about their fitness all year round, and then a good split across the others. So seeing that, I'm delighted to hand over to Adam, and just to see, Adam, from your perspective, both as a sportsman and someone who's been involved in the sport for a long time, but also your understanding of the importance of fitness for the horses and ponies in the World Horse Welfare Centres. What do you think are the challenges around fitness?
I think obviously at this time, it's been quite difficult for everybody. I think that fitness is quite a big sort of topic. The types of horses that we have here, some of them, especially sort of the horses that don't get ridden, it's more a mental fitness that we want to maintain with those sorts of horses, like maintaining the skills. A lot of these horses have not been handled a great deal, and so it's not really the type of fitness that sort of Pippa was talking about. It's more sort of a mental fitness, like a mental stimulation. Obviously, the horses that are ridden here, they need to be at a certain level of fitness, but not to the same degree as the horses that Pippa was talking about. What I'd like to do is actually talk about different types of horses. I'm going to just talk a little bit about where we were as an organisation before lockdown, and what we sort of did during lockdown. Then I'm going to talk about the different types of horses that we have here, which are the types of horses that maybe you have in your stables at home, and how you could bring those back into work safely. So pre-lockdown, like many of you, the horses were, we were sort of well into the rehabilitation programs. We were, getting them fit enough for the types of jobs that they're going to do. And obviously these horses eventually are going to get rehomed. But, pretty much like everybody out there, you will have had your horses at a certain fitness so that you could, achieve your and your horse's goals, whether that was to, go to shows, or whether you long distance rides, or whether, just riding the horses for your own sort of enjoyment, going for lessons, clinics, etc. Whatever it was, everybody was probably at the same sort of stage where the horses were, ready to go. And then obviously we had some restrictions imposed, a little bit like what Pippa was talking about. Really, I think that we need to take the positive out of it. So I'm not going to even call it a difficult time. because actually I think it's been quite a beneficial time. It's been a really beneficial time for me personally as a rider, trainer, centre manager. You know, it's given me time to think about my riding, teaching, the way that we do things here. You know, sort of given us that time to reflect, I suppose, on, you know, how we can improve the way that we do things. And obviously, like everybody out there, I don't think the stables have had so little cobwebs in them. And paint, well, paint was going out of fashion. I couldn't buy paint for love nor money. But, you know, it's given us time to do jobs that, you know, sometimes we don't get time to do. So I think it's been quite positive in a funny kind of a way. Anyway, what I'd like to do is talk through sort of bringing horses back to work. And I've actually split the horses into sort of different categories of horses that we would have at World Horse Welfare, but also different categories of horse that you may have at home. So the first one that I want to talk about is bringing the young horse back to work. You know, it's all dependent on facilities and setups and horses. So it's just a general sort of way that I like to do things here. So firstly, when we're bringing the young horses back into work, we'll do a basic health check. You know, it doesn't have to be anything too formal. It's just basically making sure that things are up to date, making sure that the horse's feet have been done, making sure that, you know, the teeth have been done. And also, if they've had quite a bit of time out of work, they may have put weight on. So it's making sure that, you know, the tack fits, because I think with the young horse, it's really, really important that we don't give that horse any reason to feel any discomfort or, you know, any reason not to want to do a job. I really, really believe that, you know, keeping the young horses happy is so important. I think that it's really important that you have a plan when you're bringing the horses back into work. And again, I don't write plans down. It's all sort of stored in my head, if you like. But what I like to do with the young horse, and it, you know, again, it depends on your sort of facilities or time or, you know, whatever. But I like to actually revisit everything that I've taught that horse. So I've actually got a picture there of a coloured horse, and he actually, before lockdown, was cantering. He'd been cantered 4 or 5 times maybe with the rider on. He was going really well, but we did decide to, you know, give him a break. Sometimes a forced break for a baby horse is actually a really good thing. It's a really positive thing. So what we did with him, I always like to, like I say, revisit each area that we've done with that horse. But obviously, you know, he's already been ridden. It will not take as much time as it did when we were starting him from sort of raw. But, you know, I would start him again long reining, and we would lunge them, and, you know, then we would again lie the rider over, and we would go through the whole process that we did before the horse had a break. I think with the babies, it's really important. I really don't like to lunge the horse, you know, to make it tired so that it's safe enough to ride. I think that the routine for the baby horse is really, really important. And again, it depends on the types of, you know, setups that you've got at home. But I think that it's really important that the babies have, you know, a lot of time out. And it doesn't even have to be in the field if you haven't got lots of access to turn out. You know, it can be time out in a sand pen or if you allow them loose in whatever facilities you've got. I think that it's really, really important to give them, you know, lots of sort of out time so that their mind sort of stays quiet, if that's the right word, so that you know, they stay mentally stimulated, but you don't have to work them excessively to, you know, for them to sort of be good enough to ride, if that's the right term. you know, also I think really it's really, really important to give them so much variety. We might not ride them every single day, probably ride the babies, you know, maybe 3-4 times a week, but you know, some days it might just be hacking out, might just be walk work, you know, just to mentally stimulate the horse and not necessarily put, you know, a lot of physical pressure onto him. The next one that I want to talk about is the horses that maybe have undergone rehabilitation, and again might have a horse at home that is undergoing rehabilitation for whatever reason. You know, horses need to be rehabilitated for so many different reasons. We see horses with injuries, we see horses with maybe behaviour that needs to be rehabilitated. So, you know, again, sort of, first of all, a bit like a health check, but not, you know, just making sure that is the horse ready to work. So if the horse has had an injury, making sure that the horse has recovered from that injury before we start to do anything with the horse. If the horse has had maybe, you know, not the best start and it's been poor, you know, is the horse up to weight? Is it strong enough to start working? And also sort of having the end goal in mind as well. You know, what do you want from the horse? You know, what is his intended sort of purpose? And I've also put in here sort of the companion horse. We have a lot of horses at World Horse Welfare that for one reason or another can't be ridden, but you know, they do a wonderful job of keeping other horses company. And you know, you can do lots of different work with those types of horses, and it doesn't have to be physical work. And the same with the horse that's undergoing rehabilitation. You know, these sort of types of horses will not want lots of physical work. So actually it's mental sort of stimulation that these horses need. You know, whether you can long rein the horses, especially horses coming out of injuries, or I would spend lots and lots of time long reining them. And again, long reining can be as physical or as unphysical as needs to be with the horse's situation. And also, like, lots of in-hand work, again, we talked about mental stimulation, but like the companion horse, you know, you can do so many things with those sorts of horses to keep them mentally stimulated so that they don't sort of have a lack of stimulation, if that makes sense, just, you know, living in the field. The next horse that I want to talk about is the all-round horse. So again, that's horses that, you know, a lot of you will have out there. We have a lot of these types of horses at World Horse Welfare. They have undergone rehabilitation and are physically fit and well in themselves and sound. So again, you know, prior to any bringing them back into work, making sure that we, you know, do visual health checks, just making sure the feet and the teeth and the tack fit. You know, if they've had a long period of time off, again, like I said before, they might have put quite a bit of weight on. So it's just making sure that we don't, you know, give the horses any reason to be uncomfortable when they're being ridden. So we have sort of a basic fitting plan for these types of horses, probably takes sort of 6 weeks to 8 weeks. Again, it's all dependent on the horses. Different horses take different amounts of time to be fit. Basic fitting plan for me would be with these horses, we hacked them. You know, we're really lucky. Again, we've got access to, you know, lots of hacking. We hacked them out for 2 weeks. Whilst they're out hacking, maybe in the sort of second, third, fourth week, we started trotting them little bits, you know, build it up slowly. And then sort of week 4 and 5, we maybe went in the school, but we didn't school the horses hard. We just, you know, we had a trot, maybe we started to canter a little bit, and we just slowly built their fitness up again to sort of back where they were before. Feeding, you know, I'm not going to sort of sit here and tell you about what to feed your horse, but I really like sort of, for these types of horses, you know, horses that we don't want to give sort of, they don't want excess energy, they're sort of leisure type of horse. I like a fibre-based diet, access to grass if they can, access to plenty of hay, and even if we feed hard feed, we tend to feed a very sort of fibre-based diet. But I think it's really important that when you are, bringing horses back to work, or whatever you're doing with them, it's really, really important that you're able to adapt, and one size doesn't fit all, and horses are different. I think that to take the time to get to know the horses, and what makes them tick, I just think it's really, really important that you are able to adapt. So although we talk about having a plan in place, it's a very, very loose plan that we can adapt as and when we need. And when the horse tells me, I like to follow the horses, especially the baby horses. You can't always plan for you're going to long rein them for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You can never say that. I believe that the horse tells us when it's ready for the next step. So just a few points really that I'd like to just sort of finish off with, summarize. Whenever you're bringing horses back into work, I think it's always really important, like I said, to just do your initial basic health check, make sure that the feet are, the farrier's been, the teeth are okay, tack fits, that the horse is well in itself. Have, like I said, a loose plan. You've got to adapt it. Every horse is completely different. Try and maintain a variety of work. So, the horse doesn't need to be sort of, again, I don't know if it's the right term, but drilled every day. The horse needs to enjoy its work. Lots of hacking if you've got access to that, or even if you haven't got access to that, just making sure that sometimes the work is more mentally stimulating for the horse as opposed to physically exerting it. Feeding, like I said, we would feed mainly a fibre-based diet. It's really important that you don't feed the horses to produce excess energy. And also just take your time, take your time over it, be guided by the horse. Don't take any shortcuts. And if you're ever in doubt, there are so many good trainers out there, professionals, specialists, whatever it is that you're struggling with. You call on those as opposed to taking any shortcuts. Back to Rolly.
Adam, thank you very much indeed. That's great, and the breadth of the perspective from you and Pippa is super, and sets up nicely. We've got just over 25 minutes for questions. I'm delighted that Adam, up until about 2 minutes before we started, didn't have any internet access, so Pippa and I were going to do a two-person show. But so Adam, thank you very much for battling your technical challenges. Lots of questions, and Pippa, I loved your quote, 95% of a horse's problems is the rider on top of it. For both of you, obviously lots of talk about equine fitness, and we'll certainly focus on that. But just a question we've had about rider fitness. What are the best ways for riders getting fit? Pippa, I'll come to you first.
Well, obviously in my case, I seem to be riding all day, every day, but I do find I am a real believer in Pilates and building up your core strength. So I think, I do a series of exercises every day before I come out onto the yard. For sure, aerobic stuff, cycling, running, whatever. But I personally, I'm not great with, I'm not great at running. I do get on a bicycle every now and then, but basically for me, it's about, because I ride all day, every day, I definitely find it's the Pilates that helps me enormously. Have to do that. Have to. Stretching, warming up, and through the Pilates.
Brilliant. Well, actually, well done, many of the people who've made comments, because Pilates has reflected very much in theirs. Adam, from your perspective, any thoughts around rider fitness?
Yeah, no, I think it is actually really, really important. And I know myself, when I am not fit, And I have actually started through lockdown, like many of you probably have eaten too much and got a little bit wayward. So I bought myself a mountain bike and I have been riding it and I feel a lot better actually. And then when I've been riding, I feel a lot fitter.
Brilliant, thank you. Then quite a few questions, Pippa, I'll come to you first, around measuring fitness, because we talk about getting our horses fit and we talk about obviously, you know, understanding and that horseman and womanship is about sort of being able to read our horses. But in terms of parameters like heart rate, respiratory rate, recovery periods, how much science do you apply to measuring fitness, Pip?
I have to say, I'm not a great one from the scientific point of view with, you know, the gadgets to check their heart, you know, that side of it. I mean, I obviously am lucky because I use my experience. I know my setup so well, and I am so lucky because I've got the most incredible hills. So mine do a lot of hill work. And then when I start to talk about eventing and doing more canter work or building up to a 3-day, when I start galloping, I know, and to me, this is where I am absolutely how I do it. I am a real believer in having a string of horses, of event horses that I can manage myself, because I personally don't like it when people have such large strings that they can't really monitor the horses, because I love to be able to be the one to gallop them, feel and be assessing the fitness for myself, rather than putting one of the girls on, sending them off to the gallops or canters, and you don't know how quickly it's taken those horses to recover. So that is, to me, absolutely paramount to me. But a lot of it comes from, again, type of horses. I know my guys, some of, pretty much all of them actually, but you know, if the more thoroughbred ones, they don't have to gallop as much as some. So I think there's no point in thinking, you know, a really finely tuned athlete. If you're a naturally fit person, like a naturally fit horse, there's no point in over doing the work, because it's just putting more and more wear and tear on. So it's knowing exactly, and it is, for me, it's knowing each horse and knowing what I'm building up to, and I know, because from experience I use the same gallops purely because I know then where I've run, and if they've run well and they've recovered really quickly at an event, I know, well, I did exactly that work with that horse. So you learn that from experience. So what I say to people that, you know, if they're watching here, if you've run round events or you've been, whatever you've done with your horse, if you actually feel you finished that competition or you finished that ride or whatever, and the horse felt good within himself, then you're pretty close. You know, you there's no point in thinking, well, I've got to give it loads more, if it's actually finished really good. And I think that's what you build on. And if there's any doubt in your head, the only doubt I've had over the years is if for any reason a horse has maybe had to miss a few weeks because it's had a foot abscess, so it might have missed a couple of gallops, and if for any reason there's something at the back of your mind thinking, God, I hope I've got this horse fit enough, then you ride in a way, in your head you think, well, you know, I've got to ride it in a way that I make sure he's got enough at the end of the competition, that you don't go all guns blaring and out the start gates flat out and fast, if you're thinking, you know, so you wouldn't ride maybe quite so competitively. So to me, I am lucky because I've got experience on my side, but it's just being sensible. If you feel, you know, and judging your horse, basically a bit like us. I know if I've done too much because I'm exhausted at the end of it, and I don't want the horses to be like that. So, you know, I think it's if they feel good when you finish, then you're on the right tracks.
Brilliant. Adam, are you a gadgets man or a measuring man, or are you a sort of a horsemanship man?
Yeah, I hate science, I'm afraid. Like Pippa, I prefer to do it through feel. I think obviously the types of horses that we're riding, we don't want them as fit as the types of horses that Pippa will be working with. But we still, if you think about it, do interval training. You know, you ride them in the school, you trot them, canter them for a few minutes, you feel them getting a little bit tired, you give them a walk, you let them recover, you pick them back up again. I think that the more you do that, the more you feel it, the fitter the horse gets. If that answers the question.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, go on, Pip.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same, because even when you're not talking, I'm not talking about fast work. I think it's really crucial if you're working horses towards dressage or jumping, but in the school at home, basically, that you keep giving him breathers and walk sessions and then picking back up, because it's very easy as riders to think, well, I haven't got to that point, and you keep going, and you think, oh my God, the horse has been going that long and poor horse hasn't had a walk. So I think it's really important to bring intervals of back to walk, giving them a chance to recover, then pick them up again and do it like that.
It's fine. I mean, because obviously in disciplines like endurance, you know, actually measuring heart rate and recovery times is so important. But especially for cross country, you're saying it's actually just understanding your horse. Different horses have a different feel, and you'll get to know them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would absolutely say every bit of when I'm riding around a cross country course all the time, you're particularly at all the time, but at those big 3 days when it's a long track, all the time you're assessing how's he feeling underneath me, you know, and you give and you know, if people are going out to do an event and they do run, just be aware, as much as you might be having to focus on jumps, be aware between fences when you're riding cross country to actually think, is my horse feeling good underneath me? And if there is a steep pull up, you know, give them chance to get a second wind, you know, and that's where it is key. And the way the horses go, I mean, as how I train them, and even when I do the faster work, as I say, I use a lot of fields to canter in. It's really important to me that they learn to canter and gallop in a relaxed way, because if you're riding a horse, and people talk about this horse pulls and it gets strong, well, to me it's about training the horse to be relaxed in that gear, because if they're relaxed in that way of going, they don't take nearly as much out of themselves, and they learn to breathe as they're cantering. And I have to say that's as important for the rider, because sometimes we hold our breath, and that affects us as a rider when we're riding cross country. We forget to breathe, and you actually get quite breathless. And there's one thing I've actually had I've thought about it a lot more recently too, you know, just making myself between fences breathe. And the horses are the same, you know, if they're relaxed in the way they gallop. And I think top race horses, they're the ones, a lot of good race horses are the ones that are relaxed and breathe, and they're the ones that get to the finish line in a better way than the ones that are.
I remember, I never forget, a pony club instructor always told me to count to 10 as I was going around the cross-country course, because then you would have to breathe. If you were talking, you would have to breathe. Otherwise, yes, the side effects of not breathing are significant, of course. I have to say, Pip, you just made me feel tired, lunging without stirrups. I felt just knackered listening to the idea, the concept of it. But to go on to another question, if you're getting a horse fit and you've got an option to ride once a day or multiple times a day, twice a day, is it best to split up or do it in one session? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have to say, because I think it doesn't matter to me. I don't, you know, I think, yes, there are advantages of doing it in 2 sessions, because particularly if the horse is in a stable, because you can get him out of his stable twice a day, which I think that's always good. You know, if they are in a stable, and a lot of the time mine are in stables, you know, I try and get them out at this time of year, but winter, our land is so bad, they don't go out a lot from once they come in. But I, on the whole, actually just ride them the once a day, but often I will find if my horse is, if I work one in the school and I think, oh my God, he's just been really cute, he's been really cooperative, he's been really good, so I might actually think, actually I've only given you 20 minutes, but I'm going, then I'll send him out for a hack, or I'll go for a hack on him as well. So I'll mix the variety up. But the way I do it, because it, realistically, when you've got a lot of horses to get through, to be tacking up, untacking it, that all takes time. So I'll do it today, but I have nothing against twice a day.
But Adam, any thoughts on that?
No, same really. I probably would only ride once a day, but again, I would make sure that, especially in winter, if the horse was stable quite a lot, I would usually, if I didn't have access to turnout, or I might give the horse a quiet lunge maybe, or something in the morning so that it gets out, and then maybe ride it in the afternoon, or vice versa. But again, I don't really have a stronger opinion on either.
A couple of questions have come through around, obviously we've talked about hard ground, Pip, and we've talked about, mentioned at the beginning around the lockdown restrictions. If people don't have decent hacking, or possibly don't have any hacking, what advice can you give to those in that position around getting their horses as fit as they need to be?
Well, I always think, obviously the quality of work you do in a school, or if you've got a small field or a school, which, if you haven't hacked, if you can't hack, then you've obviously got to either go somewhere, or you've basically got somewhere at home that you can use. I think what gives them quite a good blow, if you haven't got the hacking, is to build not a tough set of fences, not anything that that demands, but I think if you have a little course, even if it's a basic course, depending what you've got, and just keep, use your watch and just get into a good rhythm, and just keep popping jumps. They needn't be big, but it's just something that gets the horses quietly blowing, and keep an eye on your watch, and you can build it up. Start by doing 2 minutes or less than that, 1.5 minutes, but so you can, there's plenty you can do, and that's what I actually do in the winter a bit before I go to the gallop, because I do use gallops. I drive mine they're 35 minutes away, but before they start galloping, I'll often go in the school and either do that over jumps, little jumps, but also I would canter in the school off their backs, and you use the different seats, let them move down the long side, and then bring your body up, and shorten the canter, and just keep, and do a sort of slight interval training type thing. And again, it's building it up. It's not suddenly to say, go out into your school and do 3 lots of 7 minutes with 2 minutes walk between. Just start with maybe, if he's been in work, exactly, I would start basically starting doing canter work with mine after about 7-8 weeks after their winter, what I call their winter holiday. Having done a month's road work, and then 2-3 weeks, I'd start doing a bit of canter work like that. And, if they've done that sort of work, then you can just start it. You can start it just 2 minutes, and then a little break, another 2 minutes, and just gradually build it up. But I think also when we talk about building up the fitness level, I also think it's important to be aware of your own safety when we were talking about young horses, because there are some horses, and particularly young horses, and I know with our 4-year-olds, there's no hope that you can suddenly think, well, I'm going to do 4 weeks easy with it, because you get on it, its backs up, you actually need to get some energy out of it, because otherwise it's going to deck you, so you've got to still take what horses, yes, it doesn't mean you're going to overdo the work, but if you're sat on a fresh one, the worst you can do, a fresh one that's thinking its backs up, what you need to do is be riding it forward. So the sort of walking quiet road work or quietness in the school can go out the window if for your own safety and the horse's safety. You need to just ride it forward. So yes.
Yeah. So, and actually, interesting you talk about youngsters. Then there's been a few questions about youngsters. Adam, there's been a question around what tips for keeping the older horse fit.
Again, I think with the older horse, a lot of variety, and you've got to tailor it all to the types of facilities that you have. I really like, well, every horse, whatever. I like every horse to be out of the stable as much as possible. So, the older horse, making sure that it has, it can get out. If it can't go in the field, or depending on your facilities, you can walk it in hand in the morning. Lots and lots of hacking. Again, if you haven't got access to lots of hacking, or you've got an arena, you can do the same amount of work in the arena, even just at walk. You can do the same amount of sort of work that you would out on a hack with the older type of horse.
Brilliant, thank you. Pip, any thoughts on the older horse from your perspective?
Well, Adam was just saying about things you could do in the school. I mean, if you've got polls too. I mean, I'm not trying to promote my Pippa Funnell page at all on Facebook, but I've done a couple of videos, but a couple of the videos where I've laid poles and sort of wing stands in the school, and you'll see me literally just doing exercises in walk, which and I think you can bring a lot of things, whether you put bollards or buckets or in the school, and poles and whatever you've got. But as I say, you don't have to have poles. You could put shavings, bales, something that you could actually do a lot of walking around, so you're changing the bend. So again, all that changing, getting horses more supple helps with their overall fitness, because you're building muscles up. So that is all stuff I love playing with, because to me, time spent in the walk is crucial. And I think a lot of people get into a school and they miss out on that phase, and yet in a dressage test, or it's still vitally important that they can walk and they can be relaxed in walk. So I mean, if anyone wants to go on my Facebook page, if you search back, there is a good lot of exercises in walk.
Brilliant, thank you. And do promote your Facebook page. That's great, because if it's going to help people be able to keep their horses fit and get them fitter, that's even better. So a specific question here, maybe I'll give you first, Pip. My horse was super fit and ready for BE 100 prior to lockdown, then relocated and don't have an arena. So they've been hacking for an hour and 15 every day, around 10 minutes trot and canter up hills. Would he still be considered to be very fit?
Well, I mean, I would have said yes. It sounds like he would be quite fit still, because I don't think, and the vets, I think the vets say, if horses get to a level of fitness, it takes something like 4 weeks for them to start to lose it, and that's if they suddenly go from doing a lot to nothing. Whereas if she's kept the horses ticking over, like my horses haven't galloped at all since March, and where I've been doing sort of similar stuff to her, and an hour and a quarter hacking and things and cantering and I'm hoping that mine will be fit enough to 2-3 weeks, mine will be ready to run, because mine are actually fit. All I would say, they need a couple of blows, just pipe openers and a couple of good canters, and they'll be away. And so it sounds, I do, again, it depends the way she hacks them, because I know, there's hacking and there's hacking, isn't there? I know when I get on and my girls come with me, when I hack, my horses march. They don't, there's hacking and hacking. You can hack and slop along the road and they're not going anywhere, or you get on them and you hack them with a purpose. They march with a purpose, which is a bit like, isn't it? We all know if you go for a walk and you just amble along, it's very different from actually walking very purposefully, marching. And I know, because when I walk around across country with purpose, it makes me breathless when I'm really marching, and because I'm always late.
Yeah, definitely. And there was a question here, because obviously we have a number of horses that come into us, which we then back. Is it best to take them once you've backed horses, to get them straight into exercise, or is it best to turn them away for a while?
Yeah, there's a lot of sort of different opinions about this. I personally, I wouldn't back them and then turn them away. I would let the horse tell me what it was capable of. Again, like the young horse doesn't need to be physically worked all the time. Even, you know, just quietly long reining the horse, you can put as little or as much sort of physical exertion on it, I suppose you could say. I let their bodies tell me, I let the horse tell me, and you know, sometimes the horse, I don't say, right, well, I'm going to back it and I'll give it 6 weeks out. You know, the horse will tell me when it feels like it's done enough. I'll give it a little bit of a break and then I'll pick it back up again. So it's kind of intermittent, if you like.
Thank you. Pip, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're dealing with a large amount of young horses, and all of the system we sort of use is when they're broken, you know, back, they actually, they do all that work, and basically once they've been done and they're happily sort of hacking around the farm a bit and walk, trot, cantering in a very easy way without, we never worry about any outline or anything, then they actually go out, because and then we then get the next sort of lot in. So, you know, everyone's different, and again it comes to the facilities, and but sometimes with young horses, yes, I think it depends on each horse, because we won't chuck a horse out if we feel it hasn't actually got to that point where it's really chill, it's relaxed about it all. You know, if it's a little bit sharper, or maybe a little bit more, some look back at the rider a bit more, or some might be a bit more cold back, you know, we get to them comfortable and they're past that stage, and then we do put them out, and they're done as sort of 3-year-olds, and then they go out, and they go out for quite a while, because that's the system we sort of have used. But the only thing sometimes I would say is, if you keep going too long with a young horse, is like a kid, if you're not careful, you keep repeating, and then it gets bored because it's not being challenged, but physically it's not being mentally challenged, and physically its body isn't necessarily be ready to up the questions. Do you know what I mean? So you can run into problems because they mentally get a little bit bored, but yet you don't want to stimulate because they're physically not ready to go the next step. So, you know, again, it's knowing the horse, assessing them. But, you know, one of the worst things is, I mean, what we really want is, and what everyone has to be aware of with young horses, is we want them to be really quick learners. We want them to understand and get it, and be quiet and methodical, and tell them what's, you know, black's black, white's white, teach them the ABC. But if they're clever, which we want them to be, they pick up bad habits as quick as good habits. So that's where you have to be so careful with young ones, that you don't put them in a situation that they learn bad habits.
Yes, it's not just horses either, is it? But so listen, it's almost 8:15, so we're going to have to draw it to a close. And I'm sorry for the questions that we didn't get to, and I'm hugely grateful to the great engagement we've had all the way during the course of the evening. Just a reminder that for future topics, if you've got anything that you would love us to cover, then do email us at education@worldhorsewelfare.org, and we'll see what we can do about fitting them in over the course of the summer. Pippa, I did warn you, I'm not sure I warned Adam, but, you know, having sort of listened and discussed what we have this evening around keeping our horses fit during this summer, what sort of take-home, what's two or three things would you want everyone to take home?
Well, I mean, I think it's as we've said the whole time, it's really so important to assess where you're at, assess, you know, where your horse is at fitness level to whether you're starting competing. One thing we haven't touched on too is that we have to also be aware is that competitions aren't actually necessarily going to be like they're going to be new rules that we have to abide by, and it's going to be important to follow those new rules. But I think the overriding thing I would say to everyone is that you and your horse's safety is absolutely paramount. It's the most important thing. And if that means you want it safer to wait for another day when you've given yourself more of a chance, it's always, you're better off to wait than to rush it. But all I say is just stay safe.
Pippa, thank you. Adam, final thoughts?
Yeah, again, I think take your time and don't rush things. Obviously, if you've got goals or shows or whatever it is you've got in mind, just remember that the horse doesn't know about those goals. So take your time and listen to the horse and be guided by them.
Mine know, because I tell them.
Well, I don't tell mine, you see, because my own horse, if I told her, she would try and injure herself.
This is what's fascinating is whether we're talking about recovery and rehabilitation at Penny Farm or World Horse Welfare or the horses, the young horses you're bringing on, or indeed the ones you're looking to compete at the top level, is that the core of it is the same. In terms of what we need to be looking out with for fitness, and that certainly shone through for me. Not rushing things, keeping the basics, knowing your horse, and treating every horse as an individual. Those key things came through sort of time and time again. So I just wanted to say thank you initially to everyone for joining us. We've had some great interaction, and again, apologies for not being able to get to everyone's questions. But to you, Pip, and to you, Adam, thank you very much indeed. It was seamless, and thanks to the World Horse Welfare team for helping us make that so. As I mentioned, any other thoughts on future topics, then write that into education@worldhorsewelfare.org. If not, we'll be back in 2 weeks' time, same time at 7 p.m. Thank you very much, and as Pip says, please do take care of yourselves and stay safe.
Bye.